The emergency beacon screamed across the void of space, carrying with it the desperate plea of the Zephyrian Council. Admiral Kethvar's tentacles trembled as he watched the holographic display show their fleet's devastating losses. Crimson dots representing destroyed ships blinked out one by one, leaving behind only the cold emptiness of space and the advancing swarm of hive vessels. Another colony ship has gone dark, reported communications officer Veltan, her usually melodic voice cracking with stress. That's the entire outer rim defense line. The hive has consumed everything in their path. Kethvar's compound eyes fixed on the tactical display. The insectoid hive had appeared from beyond the galactic rim 6 months ago, their bioships devouring entire worlds and converting the biomass into more of their kind. No weapons seemed effective against their adaptive armor, and their numbers grew exponentially with each victory. Send the distress signal on all frequencies, Kethvar commanded, his voice heavy with the weight of his species' possible extinction. Include our complete tactical data and specify our desperate need for military assistance. Any species, any alliance, any mercenary group willing to help. The message burst across subspace networks, reaching hundreds of civilizations across the galaxy. Most ignored it entirely, having their own problems or being too far away to help. Others sent polite refusals, unwilling to risk their fleets against an enemy that had already proven unstoppable. But on a small blue planet in a spiral arm considered a galactic backwater, the message reached a species that had never been contacted before. The humans of Earth had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel and had been quietly monitoring galactic communications for decades, learning languages and studying alien cultures from afar. In the underground military complex beneath Colorado's mountains, General Sarah Mitchell stared at the translated message on her screen. The desperation was clear in every line of text, accompanied by tactical data that showed the complete destruction of multiple star systems. Ma'am, the alien fleet is requesting immediate military assistance, reported Colonel Hayes, his weathered face grim. According to their data, this hive entity has wiped out 17 different species in the past 6 months. They're describing complete planetary consumption. General Mitchell studied the tactical readouts. The hive ships appear to be biological constructs, massive creatures that could adapt to different weapon types. The aliens had tried everything from plasma cannons to antimatter bombs, but nothing had worked for long. What's our assessment of this threat level? She asked. If these readings are accurate, ma'am, this hive could eventually reach Earth. The pattern shows they're moving in a rough spiral toward the galactic core, consuming everything in their path. At their current rate of expansion, they'd reach our sector within 50 years. The general leaned back in her chair, processing the implications. Humanity had always wondered about their place in a galaxy full of intelligent life. They had spent decades preparing for first contact, developing protocols, and studying alien psychology. But this wasn't the peaceful meeting they had envisioned. What assets do we have available for immediate deployment? She asked. The Third Fleet is completing shakedown exercises near Jupiter. That's our newest carrier battle group, with full marine complements. We also have Special Operations Task Force Reaper finishing their training cycle. General Mitchell pulled up the personnel files. The Third Fleet represented humanity's most advanced military technology, including their newest class of warships equipped with experimental weapon systems. Task Force Reaper was their elite special forces unit, trained for the most dangerous missions imaginable. Ma'am, with respect, we don't know anything about these aliens. This could be a trap, or they might turn on us once the threat is eliminated, Colonel Hayes warned. True, but if this hive is real and as dangerous as described, we can't afford to ignore it. Besides, this gives us a chance to establish contact with galactic civilization on our own terms. Prepare both units for immediate departure. 3 days later, the massive human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Zephyrian territory. The aliens' first reaction was shock at the speed of the response. Most galactic species took weeks or months to mount military operations across interstellar distances. Admiral Kethvar studied the approaching ships with fascination and growing hope. The human vessels were unlike anything he had seen before, sleek and angular with obvious weapon systems mounted along their hulls. More importantly, their energy signatures suggested technology that hadn't appeared in the galactic database. Unknown vessels. This is Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Defense Fleet. We are grateful for your response to our distress call. Please identify yourselves. The response came in perfect Zephyrian, though with an unusual accent that suggested machine translation. Admiral Kethvar, this is Admiral Chun of the Terran Third Fleet. We received your distress signal and have come to render assistance. We're transmitting our tactical capabilities now and request updated intelligence on enemy positions. The data package that arrived made Kethvar's tentacles curl in surprise. The human ships carried weapons he had never seen before, including something called kinetic bombardment systems and nuclear pulse drives. Their smaller craft were described as atmospheric fighters and assault shuttles, suggesting they were prepared for both space and planetary combat. Admiral Chun, I must warn you that this enemy adapts quickly to our weapons. Every tactic we have tried initially succeeds, then fails as the Hive learns our methods. Understood, Admiral. We've studied your tactical reports. Our analysts believe we may have weapons systems the Hive hasn't encountered before. We're prepared to test that theory. As the human fleet took position alongside the remaining Zephyrian ships, long-range sensors detected the approaching Hive swarm. Hundreds of bioships moved through space like a living plague, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. Each ship was unique, having grown and adapted based on the enemies it had faced. All units, this is Admiral Chun. We're about to engage an unknown enemy using untested tactics. Remember, we're not just fighting for these aliens, we're fighting to protect Earth and every human who will ever live. Make your shots count. The human fleet spread into attack formation, their ships moving with precision that impressed the watching Zephyrians. The aliens had grown, used to loose formation flying, but the humans moved like a single organism, each ship perfectly positioned to support the others. Hive vessels are entering weapons range, reported the tactical officer. Energy signatures are spiking across their entire formation. Begin the engagement, Admiral Chun ordered. All ships, fire at will. The first salvo from the human fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Magnetic accelerator cannons launched depleted uranium slugs at relativistic speeds, while plasma batteries fired superheated projectiles that burned through space like miniature suns. Nuclear-tipped missiles streaked toward the largest bioships, their warheads designed to penetrate deep before detonating. The Hive ships reeled under the assault, their adaptive armor struggling to cope with the new forms of attack. Several smaller bioships exploded outright, overwhelmed by the sheer kinetic energy of the human weapons. The larger vessels began to shift and change, their hulls thickening and developing new defensive structures. They're adapting faster than expected, reported the weapons officer. Armor thickness is increasing by 40% across their formation. Switch to penetrator rounds and begin missile bombardment pattern 7. Admiral Chun ordered calmly. Let's see how well they adapt to nuclear fire. The second wave of human weapons was even more devastating. Penetrator rounds punched through the thickened armor before exploding inside the bioships, while nuclear missiles detonated in brilliant flashes that lit up the darkness of space. The Hive formation began to waver, something the Zephyrians had never seen before. But the humans weren't finished. As the bioships struggled to adapt to the nuclear bombardment, human fighter squadrons launched from their carriers. The small craft moved through space with impossible agility, dodging bioplasma shots while delivering precision strikes against vulnerable points on the Hive vessels. This is Raptor Leader, came the voice of the squadron commander. Beginning attack run on the largest bioship. These things are ugly up close. The fighters dove toward their targets like birds of prey, their weapons systems designed for close-range combat. Particle beams sliced through organic armor, while micro-missiles sought out what appeared to be sensory organs on the alien ships. Admiral Kethvar watched in amazement as the Hive formation began to collapse. The bioships were trying to adapt to multiple weapon types simultaneously, but the humans kept changing their tactics faster than the Hive could respond. It was like watching a master chess player defeat an opponent who could only react to the last move. Admiral Chun, he transmitted, your tactics are remarkably effective. How are you countering their adaptation so quickly? The human admiral's response carried a note of grim satisfaction. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years, Admiral. We learned long ago that the key to victory isn't having the best weapon. It's being able to change faster than your enemy can adapt. As the battle raged, more human capabilities became apparent. Their ships could operate in formation or independently. Their crews could switch between different weapon systems instantly, and their fighters could perform maneuvers that seemed to defy physics. Most impressive of all, they seemed to anticipate the Hive's adaptations and counter them before they could become effective. The tide of battle had turned, but the real test was yet to come. The largest Hive ship, a massive creature the size of small moon, began to pulse with ominous energy. The humans were about to face the true power of the Hive's collective intelligence, and their response would determine not just the fate of this battle, but the future of the galaxy itself. The massive Hive flagship pulsed with malevolent energy, its bioluminescent patterns shifting to deep crimson as it began to absorb the destroyed biomass of its fallen companions. Admiral Chun watched the tactical display with growing concern as the creature's energy signature spiked beyond anything they had recorded. "Admiral, that thing is getting bigger," reported Commander Torres from the bridge of the TFS Olympus. "Mass readings are increasing exponentially. It's incorporating the destroyed bio-ships into itself." The sight was both fascinating and terrifying. Tentacles of organic matter extended from the flagship, gathering the floating remains of the smaller Hive vessels. Each absorbed piece caused the massive creature to grow larger and more complex, new weapon ports sprouting along its hull like malignant growths. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy buildup in what appears to be a main weapon system," the sensor operator called out. "Whatever it's planning, it's going to be big." Admiral Chun studied the readings, his mind racing through possible countermeasures. This was exactly the kind of scenario their war colleges had prepared for, an enemy with capabilities beyond their understanding. The key was not to panic, but to adapt faster than the threat could evolve. "All ships, implement dispersal pattern Delta. I want maximum separation between vessels. If that thing has a superweapon, let's not give it multiple targets." The human fleet scattered across the battlefield with practiced precision, each ship moving to predetermined positions that would allow them to engage from multiple angles while minimizing the risk of catastrophic losses from single attack. Admiral Kethvar watched the human response with amazement. Most species would have either retreated or concentrated their firepower for a desperate final assault. The humans were doing neither, instead positioning themselves strategically as if they had faced this exact situation before. "Admiral Chun, our databases indicate that no species has ever successfully engaged a Hive flagship of this size. Perhaps we should consider withdrawal to develop new strategies." The human admiral's response was immediate and firm. "Negativa, Admiral Ketvar. We didn't come here to run away at the first sign of real resistance. Besides, that thing is a threat to the entire galaxy. If we don't stop it here, it'll only get bigger and stronger." The flagship completed its gruesome feeding, now nearly twice its original size. The bioship had become a floating city of organic technology, bristling with weapons that pulsed with bioelectric energy. Thousands of smaller organisms swarmed around it like antibodies protecting a massive infection. "Energy spike detected," the sensor's officer shouted. "It's firing." A beam of pure bioplasma erupted from the flagship's main weapon, a column of destruction that could have melted a small moon. But the beam struck empty space where the human formation had been moments before. The fleet's dispersal pattern had worked perfectly, leaving the massive weapon with no concentrated target to destroy. "All units, begin harassment pattern Alpha," Admiral Chun ordered. "Hit and run tactics, maximum mobility. Don't let it get a firing solution on any capital ship." The human fleet transformed its battle strategy instantly. The larger ships began a complex dance through space, their engines firing in seemingly random patterns that kept them constantly moving. Meanwhile, the fighters and smaller vessels darted in like swarms of angry insects, striking at vulnerable points before retreating beyond the flagship's weapon range. The Hive creature tried to adapt, growing new tracking systems and faster firing weapons, but the humans had learned from humanity's long history of asymmetric warfare. They knew how to fight enemies larger and more powerful than themselves, using speed and unpredictability to negate the advantage of superior firepower. Colonel Sarah Reeves led her Marine assault shuttles in a daring attack run directly toward the flagship's hull. Her unit specialized in boarding actions and close-quarters combat, skills that seemed impossible to apply against a living spaceship. Reaper 1 to Fleet Command, beginning close-approach scan of the flagship, looking for weak points and entry vectors. Reaper 1, you're getting awfully close to that thing, came Admiral Chen's concerned voice. What exactly are you planning? Colonel Reeves smiled grimly as her shuttle's sensors mapped the flagship's hull structure. Sir, that thing absorbed a lot of smaller ships. Our scans show internal cavities and passages where the bioship hasn't fully integrated the absorbed material. If we can get inside, we might be able to cause some serious damage from within. The idea was audacious beyond belief. No one had ever attempted to board a hive vessel, partly because no one had ever survived close contact with one. But the Marines of Task Force Reaper had trained for impossible missions, and this definitely qualified. Negative, Colonel. The risk is too great, Admiral Chun started to say, but Reeves interrupted. Sir, with respect, this thing is going to keep growing and adapting until it becomes unstoppable. We need to hit it where it can adapt from the inside. My people are ready. Admiral Kethvar listened to the exchange with growing amazement. These humans were actually considering boarding a hive flagship, something that violated every tactical doctrine in galactic military history. The very concept bordered on insanity. But as he watched the human fleet continue its harassment attacks, he began to understand something fundamental about these strange aliens. They didn't think like other species. Where others saw impossible odds, they saw tactical challenges to overcome. Admiral Chun, Kethvar transmitted, if your Marines are truly planning this boarding action, we can provide support. Our ships may not be as mobile as yours, but we can concentrate our remaining firepower to create a distraction. Appreciated, Admiral. Reaper 1, you have a go for the boarding mission. Try not to get digested in there. Colonel Reeves led her assault shuttles in a high-speed approach toward what their sensors identified as the largest cavity within the flagship's hull. The bioship's defensive systems tried to track the small craft, but the shuttles were designed for exactly this kind of penetration mission. Breaching in 3, 2, 1, we're through the outer hull. Jesus, it's like flying through a living cave in here. Inside the high flagship, the Marines found themselves in a nightmare landscape of organic corridors and pulsing biomechanical systems. The absorbed ships had been partially digested, their metal hulls corroded and twisted into unrecognizable shapes. Spread out and plant the charges, Reeves ordered. We need to hit the major neural clusters and any power distribution nodes we can find. Remember, this thing is alive, so think of it like performing surgery with explosives. The Marines moved through the organic passages with practiced efficiency, their combat suits sealed against the toxic atmosphere inside the bioship. They had trained for hostile environment operations on Earth's most dangerous locations, from deep ocean trenches to active volcanoes, but this surpassed anything in their experience. Colonel, I'm reading massive bioelectric activity in the forward sections, reported Sergeant Martinez. Something big is happening up there. Copy that, Sergeant. Plant your charges and move to the secondary objective. We need to cover as much ground as possible before this thing realizes we're inside it. Outside the flagship, the space battle continued with increasing intensity. The hive creature had adapted to the human harassment tactics, growing faster tracking weapons and deploying clouds of smaller organisms to intercept the fighters. But the humans adapted in return, switching to different attack patterns and weapon combinations with fluid ease. Admiral Chun watched the tactical display with professional appreciation for his enemy's capabilities. The high flagship was intelligent and adaptive, learning from each exchange and developing countermeasures. But it was thinking like a single organism, while the human fleet operated as a coordinated group of independent actors, each capable of making split-second decisions. Sir, we're getting telemetry from the boarding team, reported the communications officer. They've located several critical systems and are beginning the demolition sequence. Excellent. All ships prepare for immediate extraction maneuvers. When those charges go off, things are going to get interesting. Inside the flagship, Colonel Reeves and her team had placed their explosive devices at key points throughout the bioship's internal structure. The charges were designed to disrupt biological systems rather than simply destroy, using electromagnetic pulses and chemical agents that would interfere with the creature's neural networks. All teams, sound off. Are we ready for fireworks? The confirmations came in from across the flagship's interior. 24 elite Marines had penetrated deeper into a hive vessel than any sentient being in galactic history, and they were about to attempt something that would either cripple the flagship or get them all killed. Charges armed and ready, Colonel. Recommend immediate extraction. Agreed. All teams, move to extraction points. We're leaving this party before the music stops. The Marines began their withdrawal through the organic corridors, but the flagship's immune system had finally detected their presence. The passages began to constrict and close, trying to trap the intruders within the bioship's body. Corridors are sealing, shouted Corporal Kim. We need another route. Blast through the hull. Reeves ordered. Emergency extraction protocol. Use shaped charges to create our own exit. The Marines used their remaining explosives to blow holes through the flagship's outer hull, creating improvised airlocks that allowed them to reach their extraction shuttles. It was a desperate maneuver that relied on their combat suits maintaining pressure in the vacuum of space. Reaper 1 to Fleet Command, extraction in progress. Recommend all ships clear minimum safe distance. The fireworks are about to begin. Admiral Chun ordered the fleet to pull back as the Marine shuttles raced away from the flagship. The hive creature seemed to sense that something was wrong, its bioluminescent patterns shifting to rapid, agitated flashes. Detonation in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The charges exploded simultaneously throughout the flagship's internal structure, sending electromagnetic pulses and chemical agents racing through its neural networks. The massive bioship convulsed like a wounded animal, its weapon systems firing randomly as its nervous system overloaded. The effect was more dramatic than anyone had expected. The flagship's careful integration of absorbed materials began to break down, causing massive internal structural failures. Sections of the bioship's hull began to separate and drift apart, like a flower blooming in reverse. Michael, whispered Admiral Ketvar. They actually did it. They killed a hive flagship from the inside. But Admiral Chin wasn't celebrating yet. His sensors showed more hive ships approaching from deeper in their territory, and these vessels would have learned from the flagship's defeat. The real test was just beginning. The dying flagship's bioluminescent patterns faded to darkness as its massive bulk drifted through space, slowly breaking apart under its own structural collapse. But Admiral Chin's moment of satisfaction was short-lived. Long-range sensors were detecting new contacts approaching from the direction of the galactic core, and these signals were different from anything they had encountered before. Admiral, we have multiple hyperspace signatures incoming, reported Commander Torres, her voice tight with concern. Estimated arrival time, 6 hours. Sir, the energy readings, they're massive. Each signature is registering larger than the flagship we just destroyed. Admiral Kethvar's tentacles drooped with despair as he studied the sensor data from his own ships. Admiral Chun, I fear we may have made a grave error. When a hive fleet loses a flagship, it triggers what we call a swarm response. The collective sends everything in the region to eliminate the threat. How everything are we talking about? Chun asked, though he suspected he didn't want to know the answer. Our estimates suggest at least 12 major bioships, each one likely larger and more advanced than the flagship we just faced, plus hundreds of smaller vessels and combat organisms. It represents the concentrated military power of an entire hive sector. The implications hit the human admiral like a physical blow. His fleet had performed magnificently against superior odds, but what was coming would test them beyond anything they had trained for. The mathematics of the situation were simple and brutal. They were about to face an enemy force at least 10 times larger than what they had just barely defeated. Admiral, came the voice of General Mitchell from Earth via quantum communication relay. We've been monitoring the engagement. Outstanding work, but our strategic analysis suggests you're about to face impossible odds. Copy that, Command. Requesting immediate reinforcement and resupply. Negative on reinforcements, Admiral. The fastest ships from 2nd Fleet won't reach you for 2 weeks. However, we're transmitting new tactical data and weapon configurations that might help. Our scientists have been analyzing the bioship samples your Marines collected. The data package that arrived contained information that could change everything. Human scientists had discovered that the Hive bioships shared a common vulnerability. Their neural networks relied on quantum entanglement to coordinate their collective intelligence. Disrupt that entanglement, and the individual ships would lose their ability to adapt and coordinate. But the weapon system required to generate such disruption existed only in theory. The humans would need to modify their ships' quantum communication arrays and synchronize them across the entire fleet to create a localized disruption field. It was a desperate gamble with no guarantee of success. Colonel Reeves, Admiral Chun, called to the Marine commander who was still aboard her assault shuttle. "How much of that flagship's neural tissue did your team manage to collect?" "About 2 kilograms of various samples, sir." "Why?" "Because our scientists think they can reverse engineer a quantum disruption weapon from it. But we need every piece of data we can get about how these things communicate with each other." The human fleet began the complex process of reconfiguring their quantum communication systems while simultaneously preparing for the largest space battle in their species' history. Engineering crews worked around the clock to modify transmitter arrays, while weapons specialists programmed new firing patterns based on the latest intelligence about Hive tactics. Admiral Kethvar watched the human preparations with growing amazement. Instead of retreating or requesting evacuation, these strange aliens were actually preparing to fight an impossible battle. Their confidence seemed almost delusional until he realized it wasn't confidence at all. It was determination. "Admiral Chun, I must ask, why are you doing this? Your fleet could escape before the swarm arrives. There would be no shame in strategic withdrawal." The human admiral's response came after a long pause. "Admiral, where I come from, we have a saying, the only way evil triumphs is when good people do nothing. That swarm isn't just a threat to your people, it's a threat to every living thing in this galaxy. Someone has to make a stand. But the odds are mathematically impossible. 12 flagships cannot be defeated by conventional means." "You're right about conventional means," Chen agreed. "That's why we're going to try something unconventional. Our species has a talent for finding third options when faced with impossible choices." The 6 hours passed quickly as the human fleet completed its preparations. The Zephyrian ships took position in the rear of the formation, their crews ready to provide what support they could. It wasn't much. Most of their fleet had been destroyed in previous battles, but Admiral Kethvar refused to abandon his new allies. When the Hive swarm finally arrived, it exceeded even the worst projections. 12 massive bioships emerged from hyperspace, each one unique and terrifying. They had learned from the previous battle, their hulls bristling with adaptive armor and weapons systems designed to counter human tactics. Surrounding the flagships were hundreds of smaller vessels, biofighters, and assault organisms that moved through space like schools of predatory fish. The combined biomass of the swarm was staggering, representing the concentrated evolution of countless consumed worlds. "Jesus Christ," whispered Commander Torres as the tactical display updated with the enemy formation. "Sir, total enemy tonnage is approximately 50 times our own. Their firepower advantage is even higher." Admiral Chun studied the display with the calm focus that had carried him through a dozen previous battles. The situation was indeed impossible by conventional standards, but humans had a long history of achieving the impossible through unconventional means. "All ships, this is Admiral Chun. In approximately 30 minutes, we're going to attempt something that has never been tried before in galactic history. We're going to use our quantum communication arrays as weapons, creating a localized disruption field that should interfere with the Hive's collective intelligence." He paused, letting that information sink in across the fleet. "The downside is that this will also disrupt our own communications. Once we begin the attack, each ship will be operating independently. Captains will need to use their own judgment and initiative. Remember your training, trust your crews, and show these things what happens when they threaten our allies." The human fleet began its final approach toward the swarm, their modified quantum arrays charging with energy that made space itself seem to shimmer and distort. The Hive ships responded predictably, forming a defensive sphere with the flagships at the center and the smaller vessels creating overlapping fields of fire. Range to target 100,000 kilometers and closing, reported the tactical officer. Enemy ships are powering weapons systems. Wait for it, Chun ordered. We only get one chance at this. The disruption field has to encompass their entire formation, or it won't be effective. The hive swarm opened fire first, streams of bioplasma and living projectiles reaching out across space toward the approaching human ships. The aliens had learned from the previous battle, developing new weapons specifically designed to counter human mobility and tactics. But the humans had learned too. The fleet split into smaller formations, each one following a different approach vector that made it impossible for the hive to concentrate their fire effectively. The bio ships tried to adapt, but their responses were still coordinated by the collective intelligence that bound them together. Range 50,000 kilometers, came the report. All arrays charged and synchronized. Execute quantum disruption. All ships, Admiral Chen ordered. Every quantum communication array in the human fleet fired simultaneously, sending coordinated pulses of disrupted quantum energy toward the hive formation. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The space around the bio ships began to sparkle with quantum distortions as the disruption field took hold. Suddenly, the perfect coordination of the hive swarm collapsed. Ships that had been moving in perfect harmony began to drift apart, their collective intelligence severed. Individual bio ships tried to continue their attack patterns, but without the guiding intelligence of the collective, they became confused and disoriented. "It's working," shouted Commander Torres. "The bio ships are losing formation coherence. They're operating as individual units now." But the humans had paid a price for their success. The quantum disruption field affected their own systems as well, cutting off communication between ships and forcing each vessel to fight independently. It was exactly the kind of chaotic battlefield that human military doctrine was designed for. All ships, weapons free, Chun broadcast on the last functioning communication channel before it, too, succumbed to the interference. Take them down while they're confused. The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. 12 massive bio ships, each one capable of destroying entire fleets, found themselves fighting as individuals against an enemy that specialized in coordinated independent action. The humans swarmed around the confused giants like wolves attacking a herd of separated buffalo. Each human ship captain became their own tactical commander, making split-second decisions based on local conditions and their understanding of the overall battle plan. They switched between targets rapidly, never allowing any single bio ship to adapt to their weapons before moving on to attack another. The quantum disruption had another unexpected effect. Without their collective intelligence to guide adaptation, the bio ships began developing contradictory defensive measures. Armor that was effective against one type of human weapon made them vulnerable to another, creating windows of opportunity that skilled human crews were quick to exploit. Fighter squadrons darted between the massive bio ships like schools of fish, their pilots improvising new attack patterns based on real-time observation of enemy weaknesses. Marine assault shuttles launched boarding actions against multiple targets simultaneously, creating chaos within the bio ship's internal systems. But the hive swarm was far from helpless. Even operating as individuals, the bio ships were formidable opponents with massive firepower and adaptive capabilities. Several human vessels took critical damage as bioplasma beams found their targets, and the casualty reports began mounting. The tide of battle could still turn either way, and both sides were fighting with everything they had. The outcome would depend on which force could maintain their effectiveness longer in the chaotic, communication-disrupted environment of the quantum field. The quantum disruption field turned the space battle into a swirling chaos of individual duels between human ships and confused biovessels. Captain Maria Santos of the TFS Conquistador found herself facing a bio ship twice the size of her heavy cruiser, its organic hull still adapting to the weapons her ship had used just minutes before. "Engineering, I need every bit of power you can give me," she called over the ship's internal comm, "and weapons, switch to the antimatter torpedoes. If this thing wants to play adaptation games, let's give it something new to think about." The bio ship's surface rippled as new defensive structures grew from its hull, clearly designed to intercept the plasma bolts the Conquistador had been firing. But The antimatter torpedoes were something entirely different, weapons that annihilated matter at the subatomic level, rather than simply delivering kinetic energy. The first torpedo struck the bioship's hull and vanished in a brief flash of pure energy, taking a chunk of organic armor with it. The creature's response was immediate and violent, streams of bioplasma reaching out like angry tentacles trying to swat the human ship. Captain Santos rolled her ship through a complex, evasive pattern, using the gravitational fields of nearby debris to mask her movements. The bioship was powerful but predictable, following attack patterns that seemed logical to a single organism, but were easy for a human tactical officer to anticipate. "Ma'am, that thing is trying to grow some kind of new weapon system," reported her tactical officer. "Energy buildup suggests it's going to be nasty when it's ready. How long until it's operational?" "Best estimate for minutes." "Perfect. That gives us 3.5 minutes to kill it." Across the battlefield, similar scenes were playing out as individual human ships engaged the separated bio-vessels. The TFS Yamamoto had cornered a smaller bioship against the remains of an asteroid, using the debris field to limit the creature's movement while pounding it with railgun salvos. The TFS Wellington was conducting a running battle with two medium-sized bioships, leading them on a chase through the outer edges of the quantum field where the disruption was strongest. But it was the marine boarding actions that were proving most effective against the confused bioships. Without their collective intelligence to coordinate internal defenses, the organic vessels were vulnerable to the kind of small unit tactics the human special forces had perfected over centuries of warfare. Colonel Reeves found herself leading her second boarding mission of the day, this time against a bioship that was trying to regenerate damage from previous attacks. Her team of Marines moved through corridors that pulsed with confused bioelectric signals, the creature's nervous system struggling to function without its connection to the collective. "Neural cluster ahead," reported Sergeant Martinez, his scanner painting targeting data on their helmet displays. "Looks like this one controls the ship's weapon systems." "Light it up," Reeves ordered. The Marines' weapons were designed for exactly this kind of mission. Instead of conventional explosives, they carried specialized charges that disrupted biological neural networks, essentially giving the bioships massive strokes that paralyzed entire sections of their organic systems. The neural cluster erupted in sparks of bioelectric energy as the charges detonated, sending seizure-like spasms through the surrounding tissue. The bioship's main weapons went silent as its targeting systems collapsed, leaving it helpless against the external attacks from human vessels. "Objective secured," Reeves reported over the short-range comm, moving to secondary target. Admiral Chun, commanding from the bridge of the TFS Olympia, was fighting his own battle against the largest of the bioships, a creature that had been adapting and growing throughout the engagement. Even without the collective's guidance, this particular organism seemed more intelligent than the others, capable of individual learning and tactical innovation. "Sir, that thing just deployed some kind of energy web," his tactical officer reported. "It's trying to entangle us." Chun watched as streams of bioluminescent energy stretched out from the giant bioship, forming a net-like pattern that was clearly designed to trap his vessel. It was a clever tactic, something he hadn't seen in any of the previous encounters. "Emergency acceleration, full reverse," he ordered, and launch a full spread of penetrator missiles at the base of those energy streams. The Olympia's engines flared as the ship backed away from the energy net, while missiles streaked toward the bioship's hull. The penetrators were designed to burrow deep before exploding, and they found their targets at the points where the energy streams connected to the creature's main body. The bioship's scream was audible even through the vacuum of space, a low-frequency vibration that resonated through nearby ship hulls. The energy net collapsed as the creature's attention focused on the pain of the missile impacts, giving the Olympia the opening it needed. "All batteries, fire at will," Chen ordered. "Pour everything we have into that thing." The quantum disruption field was beginning to weaken as the human ship's arrays overheated from sustained operation. Communication was slowly returning between vessels, allowing for better coordination, but also potentially restoring the Hive's collective intelligence. "Admiral Chun, this is Captain Rodriguez on the Magellan," came a transmission over the clearing comm channels. "We've taken down 3 bioships, but our disruption array is failing. Estimate 5 more minutes before full communication restoration. Copy that, Captain. All ships, priority targets are the remaining flagships. If we could take them down before the collective reforms, the smaller ships might lose cohesion permanently. It was a race against time. The human fleet had approximately 5 minutes to eliminate the remaining large bio ships before the Hive's collective intelligence reasserted itself. If that happened, the aliens would adapt to everything the humans had thrown at them and become nearly impossible to defeat. The battle intensified as every human ship focused on the largest remaining targets. Fighter squadrons made suicide runs against bio-ship weapon systems. Marine teams conducted simultaneous boarding actions across multiple vessels, and the capital ships unleashed everything in their arsenals in concentrated barges. One by one, the massive bio ships succumbed to the coordinated assault. The TFS Constitution finished off a wounded flagship with a sustained bombardment from its main guns. The TFS Enterprise led a squadron attack that overwhelmed another bio ship's defenses through sheer volume of fire. Marine teams aboard 3 different flagships detonated their neural disruptor charges simultaneously, causing a cascade failure that crippled all 3 vessels. With 2 minutes remaining before full communication restoration, only 2 major bio ships remained active. But these were the largest and most dangerous of the original swarm, creatures that had been learning and adapting throughout the engagement, even without their collective guidance. All remaining ships, concentrate fire on the nearest flagship, Chen ordered. We need to finish this before they reconnect. The human fleet converged on the second largest bio ship, a creature that had grown thick armor plates and developed new weapons during the battle. Its hull bristled with bioplasma cannons and organic missile systems, all aimed at the approaching human vessels. "Sir, that thing is charging what looks like a main weapon," reported the tactical officer. "Energy signature is off the charts. Time to communication restoration. 90 seconds, sir." It was going to be close. The bio ship's main weapon was clearly designed to destroy multiple targets simultaneously, while the humans needed almost a minute to get close enough for their weapons to be fully effective. "All ships, emergency acceleration," Chen commanded. "Close to point-blank range and prepare for simultaneous bombardment. If we're going to die, let's make sure we take that thing with us." The human ships rushed toward the bio ship like moths toward a deadly flame, their engines straining under maximum acceleration. The creature's weapon continued to charge, bioluminescent patterns racing along its hull as energy built up in its organic systems. 30 seconds to optimal firing range, came the report. 20 seconds to communication restoration. The timing was going to be incredibly tight. If the bio ship fired first, it would likely destroy several human vessels. If the collective intelligence restored before the creature was eliminated, the entire battle could be lost. 10 seconds to firing range. Main weapon charge complete on target bio ship. Admiral Chun watched the tactical display with the focused calm of a career military officer. In a few seconds, he would either achieve an impossible victory or watch his fleet die in the attempt. Either way, they had proven that humanity belonged among the stars, fighting alongside their new allies against the darkness that threatened all sentient life. 5 seconds to optimal range. Bioship weapon systems are powering up. "All ships," Chen said quietly, "fire everything." The combined firepower of the human fleet struck the bioship at point-blank range just as its main weapon began to discharge. The timing was so close that the creature's energy beam lanced out, even as explosions tore through its hull, creating a spectacular display of destruction that lit up the battlefield like a new star. When the light faded, both the bio ship and 2 human vessels were gone, victims of the mutual destruction. But the sacrifice had been worth it. With only 1 major bio ship remaining, and the smaller vessels already showing signs of confusion and disorganization, the tide of battle had finally turned decisively in favor of the humans and their alien allies. The final bio ship hung in space like a wounded leviathan, its massive bulk scarred and bleeding bioluminescent fluid from dozens of impact points. Around it, the smaller hive vessels drifted aimlessly, their collective intelligence severed and their individual minds struggling to comprehend their isolation. Admiral Chun surveyed the battlefield from the bridge of the Olympia, counting the cost of their unprecedented victory. 3 human vessels have been destroyed outright, 2 more were critically damaged, and nearly every ship in the fleet showed signs of battle damage. But they had achieved something that no galactic species had ever accomplished. They had defeated a full hive swarm. Communication systems are back online, Admiral, reported the comm officer. We're receiving transmissions from Admiral Kethvar. Admiral Chun, came the Zephyrian commander's voice, filled with amazement and gratitude. What your species has accomplished here will be remembered for millennia. You have saved not just my people, but countless civilizations throughout the galaxy. Don't celebrate yet, Admiral, Chun replied, studying the tactical display. We still have one more flagship to deal with, and if it manages to reconnect with any of the smaller ships, we could have a problem. The remaining bioship was indeed attempting to re-establish contact with its swarm. Tendrils of bioelectric energy reached out from its hull, seeking to reconnect with the drifting smaller vessels. Each successful connection brought a flash of renewed activity to one of the minor bioships, but the process was slow and clearly difficult without the original collective infrastructure. Sir, Marine teams are requesting permission for final boarding action, came the voice of Colonel Reeves over the comm. My people want to finish what we started. Chun considered the request. The final bioship was clearly weakened and struggling, but it was still a massive creature capable of incredible destruction. Sending Marines into its interior would be extremely dangerous, but it might be the fastest way to end the threat permanently. Permission granted, Colonel. But I want this to be a surgical strike. Get in, plant your charges, and get out. No heroics. Copy that, Admiral. Reaper teams are moving to assault shuttles. As the Marines prepared for their final mission, the human fleet began the delicate task of eliminating the smaller bioships that were still drifting in space. Without their collective intelligence, the creatures were helpless, but they still represented a potential threat if allowed to escape and report back to other hive forces. Captain Santos of the Conquistador led the mop-up operation, her ship moving methodically through the debris field to eliminate the remaining bio-vessels. It was grim work, more like euthanizing wounded animals than conducting a space battle, but it was necessary to prevent any intelligence about human tactics from reaching other hive forces. Target eliminated, she reported after each kill, her voice flat with exhaustion. Moving to next contact. Meanwhile, Colonel Reeves and her assault teams were approaching the final bioship in their shuttles, using the debris from the previous battles as cover. The massive creature was still trying to reconnect with its swarm, its bioluminescent patterns flickering erratically as it struggled with unfamiliar isolation. Multiple entry points identified, Reeves reported. The damage from our previous attacks has created openings throughout the hull structure. We should be able to place charges at critical points and withdraw before it can respond effectively. The Marines split into 3 teams, each targeting a different section of the bioship's internal structure. Their previous experience with hive vessels had taught them where to look for the neural clusters and power distribution networks that kept the creatures functioning. Team Alpha, led by Sergeant Martinez, made their way through the forward sections of the bioship, seeking the primary command cluster that controlled the creature's higher functions. The corridors were even more chaotic than in the previous vessels, with organic systems failing and regenerating randomly as the creature struggled to maintain itself. Neural activity is all over the place in here, Martinez reported. This thing is having the equivalent of a massive nervous breakdown. Team Bravo, under Corporal Kim, targeted the bioship's power generation systems, following energy readings toward what appeared to be the creature's organic reactor core. The deeper they went, the more alien the environment became, with biomechanical systems that defied human understanding. Colonel, you need to see this, Kim transmitted, her voice filled with awe and horror. We found what looks like a processing facility. There are remains here, from dozens of different species. The discovery confirmed humanity's worst fears about the hive. These weren't just alien conquerors seeking territory or resources. They were a plague that consumed entire civilizations, incorporating their biomass and technology into an ever-growing collective organism. Team Charlie, led by Reeves herself, made their way toward the bioship's communication systems, seeking to permanently sever its ability to reconnect with the collective. The path took them through sections that still showed signs of the absorbed vessels, twisted metal, and alien technology partially digested by the hive organism. Charges placed came to reports from all three teams as they completed their missions, ready for extraction. But as the Marines began their withdrawal, the bioship's failing systems triggered one last desperate defense. The corridors began to contract and seal, trying to trap the intruders within the creature's body while its immune system mobilized to eliminate them. Emergency extraction protocols, Reeves ordered. Blast through the hull if necessary. We're not getting digested by this thing. The Marines used their remaining explosives to create new exit points, blowing holes through the bioship's outer hull to reach their waiting shuttles. It was a desperate maneuver that left them exposed to vacuum, but their combat suits were designed for exactly this kind of emergency. All teams clear, Reeves reported as the last shuttle pulled away from the bioship. Charges are set for simultaneous detonation. Recommend all ships clear minimum safe distance. Admiral Chun ordered the fleet to withdraw as the Marine shuttles raced toward safety. The bioship continued its desperate attempts to reconnect with its swarm, unaware that its death sentence had already been placed within its own body. Detonation in 10 seconds came the countdown from the Marine demolition specialist. The charges exploded simultaneously throughout the bioship's critical systems, sending cascades of neural disruption through its organic networks. The massive creature convulsed like a dying animal, its bioluminescent patterns flashing in rapid, chaotic sequences before fading to darkness. With the death of the final flagship, the remaining smaller bioships lost all cohesion. They drifted through space like lost children, their simple minds unable to function without the collective intelligence that had guided them since birth. The human fleet systematically eliminated them over the next several hours, ensuring that no trace of the hive swarm would survive to threaten the galaxy again. As the last bioship exploded in a shower of organic debris, Admiral Chun allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. They had achieved the impossible, defeating an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for months. But, more importantly, they had announced humanity's presence on the galactic stage in the most dramatic way possible. Admiral Chun, came the voice of Admiral Kethvar over the comm. I must ask, what will your people do now? This victory will spread throughout the galaxy within weeks. Every civilization will want to know about the humans who defeated the hive. Chun considered the question carefully. Earth had been preparing for first contact for decades, but they had always imagined it as a peaceful meeting of equals. Instead, humanity had introduced itself to galactic civilization as warriors, as the species that could accomplish what no one else had managed. We'll do what we've always done, Admiral, he finally replied. We'll adapt to the situation and try to make the best of it. My people have a saying, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. I did not understand this reference to fruit, Kethvar admitted. It means we take whatever circumstances we're given and find a way to make them work in our favor. Right now, that means establishing diplomatic relations with the galactic community and offering our military expertise to help defend against future hive incursions. There will be other hive forces, the Zephyrian admiral warned. What we faced here was only a small fraction of their total numbers. The main collective exists somewhere beyond the galactic rim, and they will eventually respond to the loss of this swarm. Then, we'll be ready for them, Chun said with quiet confidence. And next time, we won't be fighting alone. Every species in this galaxy has a stake in stopping the hive. It's time we all work together. As the combined human and Zephyrian fleets began their journey back towards civilized space, Admiral Chun composed his report to Earth Command. It would be a document that changed the course of human history, announcing not just first contact with alien civilizations, but humanity's new role as the galaxy's premier military force. The message he sent was simple but profound. Mission accomplished. First contact established. We are no longer alone, and neither is anyone else. Humanity has joined the galactic community as its newest defender. In the months that followed, the news of the human victory spread throughout the galaxy like wildfire. Species that had cowered in fear of the hive began to hope again, while others sought to establish diplomatic relations with these remarkable newcomers who had appeared from nowhere to save them all. The humans, for their part, adapted to their new role with characteristic pragmatism and determination. They established embassy stations throughout the galaxy, shared their military technologies with allied species, and began building the coalition that would eventually push back the Hive threat permanently. And in the depths of space, where the battle had taken place, a monument was erected by grateful civilizations. It bore a simple inscription in dozens of galactic languages. Here, the humans made their stand. Here, hope was reborn among the stars. The galaxy would never be the same. In their darkest hour, when all seemed lost, they had called for aid. And from a small blue world on the edge of known space, the Deathworlders from Earth had answered that call, changing the course of galactic history forever.